As the song ends, they ride around the corner to Isengard. They meet the replete hobbits, who have dined, drank, and smoked. Stoned on pipeweed as he is, Pippin, not surprisingly, finds the Palantir, which is the biggest, shiniest thing around to look at. Ooh. He thinks it may be one of Treebeard's marbles. Looks about the right size, and after listening to him talk, Pippin is fairly sure he must have lost them. But Gandalf nicks it before Pippin can ask. The celebration party back at Edoras, and Éowyn is trying to get Aragorn drunk again. We see her as she gives him his 15th victory cup, which she knows by custom he's obliged to drink. He says, "Look, a pony." And when she turns with a squeal to look, he pours his drink surreptitiously into a passing hobbit. Aragorn is being a bit of a tease at this point. He knows full well that Éowyn is not going to get a lip wrestle with the kingly stubble, and yet he keeps giving her looks which are surely designed to smoulder her corset off. Éowyn keeps her hopes up and returns to the party along with 800 huge, hairy, quaffing men, understandably dreaming of a way out. But back to the wastelands. Gollum is finding it increasingly difficult to find novel ways to talk to himself. He's already done turning left and right, and he's tried both sides of the tree trunk. And when beaten, he resorted into curled in a ball and patting himself on the back, precious. What we didn't see was the times he tried it with two different hats. A black fedora for Gollum and a propeller hat for Smeargol. Now he's talking to his reflection, and he is in fact reflecting on the hobbit's impending deaths at the hands of someone he refers to as she. Later we find out that Gollum knows Shelob well and always refers to her by her first name. With dizzying speed, we are thrown back to Edoras, where Pippin is trying to get his giant marble back from Gandalf. He takes hold of the Palantir and crackles of energy lance out from the dark sphere. It all looks very familiar. And suddenly we realise what's been missing. Sauron's motivation for conquering Middle-earth. He's the world's greatest collector of kitsch. He has the energy ball Palantirs, the mood-sensitive ring, armies of little rubber figures, the orcs, and Mount Doom, the world's largest lava lamp. Inside Barad-dûr, he already has the giant fluffy dice of Eregion, and he's trying to complete his boy's own collector set of stuffed elven war heroes. Somewhere to the north, on an unidentified path in the forest of subplots, Arwen is making her way to the Havens. She is having visions, possibly of other movies. She sees dead people. A small child runs through a house, home alone. The child looks a bit like Anakin Skywalker. Is Arwen destined to be the mother of Darth Vader? It's all getting a bit confusing. So Arwen runs back to Elrond to ask him for the plot. However, Elrond is the last person to ask, as he too has lost it. Arwen asks Elrond to reforge the sword, Narsil. And Elrond, who thinks Aragorn took it with him in Book 1, stunned to find it still here. He wonders how often Aragorn has embarrassed himself by showing people his sword and claiming it to be of kingly origin, while behind his back they giggle and point to the Made in Taiwan sticker. Gandalf and Pippin arrive in Minas Tirith, a city made entirely of stairs, whose inhabitants boast the strongest thigh muscles in Middle-earth. Gandalf rides straight to the top, running down pedestrians and ignoring traffic signals along the way like the hero that he is. Hey. Minas Tirith also appears to have the slowest guards in the world. Gandalf is a good 20 yards past them by the time they say, halt? Oh. Here we meet the last of Tolkien's seemingly endless array of characters. Denethor, the steward of Gondor. Not, must be made clear, the king. Kings sit on the throne. Denethor sits on a fold-up mahogany camp stool at the foot of the stairs. Kings dine on peacock and swan. Denethor gets to eat takeaway barbecue chicken and cherry tomatoes. Kings dress in robes of ermine. Denethor appears to be wearing a robe made of shag pile carpet trimmed with muppet fur. Thus, snugly wrapped in the mortal remains of Snuffleupagus. He is insanely jealous of Gandalf's new white look. He used to like Gandalf visiting because next to the scruffy old grey Gandalf, even Denethor looked good. Denethor asks how Gandalf got the new image. Gandalf explains that you have to plummet to a certain death while wreathed in flame. Denethor looks thoughtful. The meeting does not go well and Gandalf leaves in high dudgeon. Frodo and company arrive in Minas Morgul. Gollum tells them that the glowing, ghastly green fortress limned with deathly pallid light is the home of the enemy, just in case they mistook it for Disneyland. Frodo, with his usual sense of self-preservation, attempts to walk across the bridge. It is suggested that this is another power of the ring which never occurred in the book, but in reality, the orcs behind the gate are cooking bacon, eggs, and coffee. And the smell is wafting. Frodo, who is dying for coffee, is just wondering if they'll have any Worcestershire sauce when the other two jump on him and drag him to the foot of the secret stair. This is a staircase that would even give a resident of Minas Tirith pause. It appears to go straight up the side of the cliff, and at some point seems to lean back outwards again. Sam swears that further up in the darkness he can make out a loop-de-loop. Frodo is about to make the obvious comment to Gollum about sticking it where the sun doesn't shine, until he realises he's in Mordor, where the sun never shines, and it's already stuck there. Fortunately, Frodo is startled out of this mental Mobius trip by the Witch King of Angmar on his vast and evil bat-winged steed, Pookums. The armies of Mordor are unleashed, each one armed with a novelty garden implement. Minas Tirith, and Pippin is sent climbing by Gandalf to light the beacon. Osgiliath and Faramir's forces are attacked by the Morgul host, led by a pale, swollen, warty orc, who looks not unlike the fellow from the Quatermass experiment. Who is this mysterious orc? Where was he in the book? Pippin lights the beacon, aided by another couple of Minas Tirith's lightning-fast guards. Halt. Oh. Beacons are lit all along the summits and in some improbable places. The tops of mountains and scarps, high pointy peaks above the clouds. Gondor's policy towards funding pyromaniacal mountain goats has at last paid off. Aragorn sees the beacon first and runs to Theoden and excitedly pants, "Gondor asks for your aid!" The gathered court is tense with excitement until Theoden says, "Oh, yeah, right." Just in time, someone at the film studio remembers what book they're filming and opens it to the muster of Rohan. But it's too late. The plot is loose and flapping around wildly. New characters are being introduced wantonly. Anything could happen. It's no longer safe to say, "Oh, yeah, I read the book, I know how it ends." Maybe this is the alternate reality, where Sauron sees the error of his ways, the elves all come back from the west, and Gimli and Legolas are wed. Things aren't going well in Osgiliath, and Faramir orders his men to retreat to the city. Here, we see how terrifying the new, improved Nazgul are. The old ring wraiths, on horseback, were limited in their ability to damage an enemy. Their main attacks were hissing and rude hand gestures, particularly effective with pointy metal gloves. However, now, mounted on giant flying lizardly things, the size of elephants, they are almost unstoppable. It's much easier to scare your opponent if your mount can eat his mount. The riders appear doomed. Then, out from the wall comes Gandalf, the White Rider. In the book, Pippin watches Gandalf ride from the city walls. But in the film, Gandalf has taken Pippin with him, for no readily apparent reason. But Gandalf knows what he's doing. Realising that the film Nazgul are much, much nastier, he's taken Pippin for insurance. If they chase him, he can throw the hobbit off to distract them. Luckily for Pippin, all goes well. Gandalf scares the riders away by switching on his high beam, and they all get to the city, where Faramir reveals his knowledge of the other two hobbits. Gandalf says, "You better tell me everything." Faramir replies, "Okay. In the beginning, Eru the One, who in the Elvish tongue is named Ilúvatar, made the Aenor of his thought, and made a great music before him. In this music, the world was begun." Gandalf stops him. "Very cute, Dan. Now cough up the dirt on the hobbits." Halfway up a cliff in Cirith Ungol, the hobbits are asleep, wrapped in their elven cloaks. The cloaks display yet another trait. They are made of elven Velcro. This allows the hobbit to sleep peacefully inches away from a terminal plummet. Gollum is planning to get rid of Sam. He misses the obvious solution, rolling him 3 inches to the left. And instead concocts a scheme with lembas crumbs. Frodo once again shows that he has the same sense of self-preservation as Sauron's optometrist. He sends Sam away and follows Gollum, still desperately trying to find the concealed entrance to the third book. Back in the White City, Denethor has sent Faramir on a suicide mission. Denethor is eating his lunch when he gives Faramir his orders. Faramir goes and assembles a troop, gets armed and mounted, rides through many levels of Minas Tirith, and charges across the Pelennor to Osgiliath. Cut to Denethor, who's still eating his lunch. Must have been a huge barbecue chicken. Pippin is asked to sing a song. Oh, great, he thinks, dinner theatre. Denethor now shows how contemptibly inconsiderate he is by requesting American Pie. The muster of Rohan. Theoden has shown his grasp of strategic positioning by placing his command tent half a mile up a cliff and right in front of the entrance to the Dimwold, the only evil-haunted mountain in Rohan. Messages from the troops are gasped out by barely conscious runners, and orders are sent back tied around a rock and lobbed over the side. Aragorn is wakened from a dream and sits bolt upright with his knife drawn. The king's messenger seems remarkably unsurprised by this. And we must assume that the Rohirrim, being warriors, all wake up like this, armed and ready to attack. This makes the job of bugler in Rohan one of the most dangerous in Middle-earth. They forego the usual da-dum-tiddly-yum, 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 da-da-da, and now just settle for da and a very quick retreat out of the tent, amidst flying cutlery and arrows. Just as the plot seems to be settling back into a groove, Elrond appears to shake it up again. Elrond explains about the Black Ships and the need to gather an army of undead together to fight them. Aragorn looks thrilled and says he'd love to help, but he left his ghost-controlling sword of kingliness in his other trousers. Ah ha ha! Elrond smirks, waves his robes about dramatically and pulls out, ha ha! 2 white rabbits and a dove. Elrond grins sheepishly and tucks them back in and pulls forth Anduril, Flame of the West, which he hands to Aragorn. Aragorn's clearly been a bit wussy in the fights up till this point, and he requires a high-powered +15 orc hacking blade to bring him back up to speed. Elrond explains what's been happening to Muthi Arwen. Unlike book Arwen, who sits around doing tapestry and waiting to be summoned for marriage, movie Arwen has her fate tied to the ring. Now, this is a little confusing, as Arwen doesn't wield one of the elven rings of power. Elrond, Galadriel and Gandalf have those. So there seems no more reason for her fate to be linked to the ring than, say, Gaffiganji. Galadriel explains that everything created with a ring of power will fade when the One Ring is destroyed. And it is possible that Elrond created Arwen using his elven ring. Although where he was wearing it at the time boggles the mind. And did it turn invisible? Aragorn tells Éowyn that he can't give her what she wants, and he's not talking about a My Little Pony set. And he rides off on the paths of the dead. Éomer tells Éowyn that she can't take her pet hobbit into battle because his arms are too short, which is a bit rich coming from a man that won't enter a fight without a horse between his legs. Theoden tells Éowyn to stay at home and smile. He's been reading back issues of Women's Weekly while waiting for Elrond to get out of his tent. Éowyn, not surprisingly, dresses herself as a man and, grabbing Merry, the only male she can boss around, rides off to kill as many orcs as possible, preferably male ones. Rohan rides. That was my riding knees. Gondor, and Faramir returns, dragged by his horse and riddled with orc arrows, and with a Mordor GPO return to sender sticker stuck on his armour. He is brought to the top towers where Denethor, flapping around in his Muppet skin robes, goes mad at the sight of him and looks out upon the armies of Mordor. And he orders these people to flee. Strangely enough, the guards of Minas Tirith manage to follow this order promptly and run around in ever-decreasing circles. Film Gandalf, who is much, much more direct than book Gandalf, smacks Denethor over the head with his stick. This is what will come to be known later on as a staff takeover of operations. The guards of Minas Tirith, in a quick return to form, protect their lord and steward with a cry of, stop? Oh. Gandalf rallies the troops, while Denethor crawls off to gather his loyal servants and his son and get ready for his big number.